We are going to get started with asking questions. So, like I said, at any point, you are welcome to put your questions that you may have in the chat. And if anyone has, I don't see any questions right now, actually. So, I have a question to start us off, and while we're beginning, just be thinking of it. So this one is for the alumni first, and then Nadare, I have a question for you. But for the alumni, can you share what was the biggest, or what were some of the biggest challenges you faced as an international student while searching for jobs and internships? And then the second part to that, how did you overcome those challenges? And whoever wants to go first, go first.
Ivana, you want to go
I guess,
first?
sure, yeah, I can go first. But yes, as I mentioned, I think my time was a little like of a, hard time because it was 2020. But in general, I think regardless of the pandemic, it's just hard. For me, I found it hard, and like for my friends who are international too, and that had the similar experience. That whenever so they usually do this in jobs where I think it's a little like confusing, and I feel like it should be two separate questions, but they ask you about sponsorship a lot. So it's like, will you now or in the future require sponsorship is just like one question. And so for internships, you don't at all because it's just, a summer. And then if you want to continue, then if you have a STEM extension, then you get 3 years. If you don't, then you get one after college. So up to a certain point, you don't require sponsorship, right? But there's a lot of companies which that's one thing that they look for. They would like someone who can just work without needing to be sponsored. So I found that a little challenging, and from that experience from other people as well. But the way you navigate through that, I guess, is just still applying anyway. That's what I did, regardless of whether that's a question or not, and regardless of how that would affect you. And then in addition to that, specifically with COVID, I guess, there was, I think, a lot of places that were just like um, not hiring anymore for certain positions. They were closing positions or just deciding to like, or just wanting to not hire for the year. Um, and that affected everyone, right? Like domestic and international people. And so, how I dealt with that was that I figured out that if I applied to internships, which you don't really think about when you graduate, you think about, oh, I'm just going to apply for a full time job. But I thought that applying to internships, they're like less paid than a full time job. They still like think about you as, sort of like in a learning environment. So I think for me, at least in the field that I wanted to go to, which was sort of like policy research and like computational social science and that sort of fields where it's very like research focused, it's more like I felt like through an internship I could gain skills to then apply for a full time job if like no full time jobs were available from what I could tell. So that's what I did after I graduated. I applied to a lot of internships in addition to full time jobs, and it ended up working out for me. Um, so that yeah, so I got like two internships, and then those two internships were what gave me the experience. In addition to like my, Calvin education and my experiences at Calvin, those internships sort of helped to like enhance all of that, and then through that, I was able to obtain a full time job now. Um, so yeah, I would say, in summary, I guess the immigration is a hard one, and then yeah, just applying for things, even if it's just internships or um, yeah, even like another thing that I found that I did was that even when jobs I felt like I didn't meet like 100% of the requirements, like I still applied to them anyway, and like some of them, you end up getting interviews for them regardless. So that was also another thing that helped me like overcome that. Just yeah, making sure I applied to everything that I thought I could apply to.
I can go next. Yeah, I think similar issue with Ivana, right? I mean, we're on the same boat boat. So, um, apart from just applying for jobs, right? I think visa status for us international students is also limits us to only do things that are quite similar to your major, and so that actually narrows the. It's a good thing and a bad thing in a sense. First, you're more focused on what you're studying, so whether you want it or not, you need to do that. But at the same time, if you are interested in other things, for example, I'm interested in maybe social work or something, you're not able to do that because employer needs to have justification on how to connect it with your visa. And moreover, I think a lot of, and we have Nadira here from Spectrum, for sure you can give more insights later, but um, some smaller companies, they're actually willing to hire you, but they're not aware of the process for international students. And so sometimes it's very good. I think I see Brent as well here in the call, right? Yeah. It's very good for you to connect with the DSO and just understand how CPT OPT works. And from there, you can actually educate your employers on, hey, it's actually not that hard. Here's the process for CPT, here's the process for OPT. So getting in touch with your immigration coordinator. I think Brent is raising his hand there. You can reach out to him. Is quite important. And so actually did that for a couple of companies to help them out with the OPT process. And actually right now I'm volunteering for this nonprofit organization, and I actually help them with their OPT program in order to kind of onboard volunteers. And so that helps international students from Calvin College or from Indonesia as well to be able to at least do something, gain the necessary skills, because that's important when you go to jobs, not just education, but skills that you can apply to your job. So that's visa status. And just a funny story, actually, how did I know that matters is because I think 2016 to 2017, there was a shift in administration in the US, right? And that's when I realized that in the form application, they started asking that question, do you need sponsorship or not? And I like to go to job fair, and you can ask Meredith or Lori about that. And as a science student, like I like to test things. I tested 2 job fairs, similar employers. You go to the companies there, right? The first time I go there, I mentioned that I was an international student. And of course, there's a lot of pushback saying that, oh, I'm sorry, we cannot do that. But the second time I went, I didn't say that I'm an international student. And so what happens there, the next week, I got a bunch of emails saying, hey, we want to go interview or not. And then I emailed them, hey, and I'm an international student, right? So what this tells us, right, whenever you get like rejections or anything, it might not be because you're not competent or your character isn't good. It might just be because of the landscape here. And so don't be discouraged. Keep striving, right? Because you actually do have the skills necessary. And I mean, the second thing I want to emphasize is for us international students, we might come from a different culture and background. And especially for my side, my culture is a bit more of a, you don't like to, networking is hard. It's, you don't like, I don't like, and some people might relate to this, to brag about myself or anything, right? But the way I overcome that, and that's actually necessary, not necessary, important to highlight some of the skills. Just be truthful, right? If you have the skills necessary, think of it like you're telling that you're able to do these things, but also be truthful that, hey, these are the things that I will need improvement on and what the Career Center has taught me and some business classes taught me. Try to frame it in a positive light, right? Show that willingness to, your eagerness to learn how to learn, right? Because college teaches you that particular thing very well. Learn how to learn. You go to PE class, you do it certain thing. You do your core classes, you do it in a certain way. Different types of learning, and that's what's important in the job market. This ability to learn how to learn, and especially for internships, they know that when you're coming, you're not 100% expert in all things, right? It's called an internship for a reason. It gets a bit trickier when you apply for jobs, especially if you're later in your career. But just be truthful and try to frame it in a positive way. Have that confidence, right? And what I've learned, networking is a skill. At first, it's going to be uncomfortable for sure, but you will need to sharpen that and be truthful and just continue to develop that skill over time. I think those are the things.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much for sharing that from both of you. So, just kind of summarizing, you're saying from Ivana to make sure that you're going out after jobs, no matter what, just applying, no matter what, and then being honest and just, yeah, putting yourself out there and being confident. So I think both of those are really, really good advice. And David, I'm glad that you actually brought up um, like when to disclose when you are a international student. That's actually the question that I have for Nadare. But before I do go any further, yes, we do have Brent Wilkinson on, and he is our immigration coordinator. So if we do have any questions about immigration, Brent is able to answer those. Would you like to say something real quick, Brent?
Yeah, if that's all right. I just wanted to add two quick
Oh,
things
absolutely.
to what David said. And David and Ivana, it's really good to see you both. Thanks for being on today. But first off, I just wanted to say, if you're ever in communication with employers, you can always feel free to give them my contact information, because sometimes they just want to talk to someone directly and understand the ins and outs of the immigration process. So you can always give them my phone number, give them my email address, and I'm happy to talk if they've got questions. And then the other thing, I think David makes a really good point about not leading your search by saying, "Hi, my name's David. I'm an international student." Obviously, that's not going to be very encouraging to employers. But I would at the same time encourage you to be very honest with applications and read the questions very carefully. So if it says, "Do you need sponsorship?" you can say no. But if it says, "Do you now or will you ever need sponsorship?" you should answer that yes, because if you move forward in the process and then they find out that that wasn't true, that can also harm your application. So that's all for now. But yeah, if any other questions come up, I'll be on today.
Yes, thank you so much. And again, even after this workshop, please feel free to reach out to Brent. He is a great advocate. So yes, use him. And I see we have, I don't know if that was something in the chat, but I'm going to go to Nadare. I have a question for you first, and then we'll come back to the chat. So kind of going based off of what they were saying, when to disclose, because we find that a lot of international students try to figure out when is the perfect time to disclose that they are international students. So in your opinion, when is the appropriate time to say that?
Yeah, so I would echo kind of what Brent had said, like being truthful in your application is really important, because I would say, like, personally, when I was recruiting, like, those are some legal questions that we have to ask. A lot of the times, if I'm reviewing candidates, I'm really just basing it off of like your resume. So I'll be looking at your experience. I'm not too concerned with, or I don't really look at those legal questions in regards to like if you're needing sponsorship when I'm just reviewing your application to consider you for an initial HR interview. At least here at Spectrum Health, for our kind of HR interviews process, we do ask legal questions, and we do ask if you will now or in the future require sponsorship. And that's kind of where we want, I think that's important to being consistent and truthful about your application. I think, especially if you have like your CPT or your OPT, like for that, that's not really a big concern for us, just because, I mean, you already have a potential, like a visa to cover being able to work here legally in the United States. So that is not going to be a hindrance. It would be a concern, I think, and being able to kind of be open and upfront if you're applying for jobs after graduation where maybe you need like an H-1B or different visas. That's going to be because there is a cost for the employer. And I think that's kind of the main thing. I mean, truthfully, it's kind of like probably a couple $1,000s, I think, up to a couple $1,000s to sponsor a visa from the employer side. And here at Spectrum Health, we have a legal counsel who's specifically for like our immigration, like helping us with matters of immigration, as well as we have a immigration specialist within our HR department, which is kind of nice, the fact that we do have all those since we are such a large employer. But I think just being upfront and honest, like when we are asking those questions, and kind of being truthful in your application process, because that's going to be like if you're not truthful, that is really a hindrance, because then it just throws everyone off. I'm not prepared to maybe let the leader know, that there is a cost. I mean, I think if you have the right skills and the knowledge and experience that the hiring manager is looking for, then the cost for supporting your immigration status would not be a concern. I know there are certain certain countries that we have harder time supporting immigration, specifically, like I can speak to like mainland China and India, just because of the there's like a country-based green card allocation limits that we are aware of, like just governmental wise. So there are some limits. So just being able to have that upfront conversation so that we aren't wasting your time and kind of being cognizant of everyone's time. But I would say being transparent is always the best and is going to help, and it won't hinder you, at least in my opinion.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. I have a follow-up question to that real quick. Would you say, so like, say they don't ask the question of sponsorship or so on an application, and David said he mentioned it once they were emailing. Would you say you should say it in the email or when you get to the interview?
So like if like in David's instance in networking, I don't think like, I think it's a good a point of like, I don't think it should be a hindrance or the main factor of when you're networking with people to say like, oh, I am an international student, because then it's just setting a different tone. Like, I think making sure like you're interested in a job with them and this is kind of what your skill set and your knowledge, and then like secondary is the fact that you're an immigrant or have an international student and needing that immigration support if needed.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, so we do have a question in the chat, and the question is, would post-COVID job market be more hostile or friendly to the international students? And Nadare, you can probably start with that, and then if you guys have any input from your personal experience, especially Ivana graduating in the midst of it.
I would say kind of as what I've seen right now, as we're kind of getting closer or hopefully kind of getting out of the post-COVID, I would say given the job market that we are seeing across the nation, I think would probably be more open to international students in the job market just due to the high demand that there is for job seekers right now, from my impression.
Yeah, I think that's what I can perceive too. I also think that in my experiences, I've worked a lot with like universities or research institutions. Like those organizations, in my experience, have been a lot more open to international people. Just like sponsoring different kinds of visas too, like the J visa, which is like a researcher visa. That's like very common in those places. So I don't know a lot about like the for-profit sector, but it seems that it's trending that way too.
I think I'll add up to what Ivana said. I think it's very important to know the different types of visa, different type of organization, because I think even Nadia, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Spectrum actually is a non-profit organization, and I don't think their H-1B is capped. So these kind of nuances, different organizations like NGOs as well, religious organizations can sponsor R1 visas, and then if some of you are teacher here, because I know Calvin is good at educations, right? If you go to public school, they also have a separate H-1B pool. Of course, these are not legal advices. These can change. Always try to do your own research. But knowing this will definitely help you narrow down your scope of job search, right? In terms of my company in the for-profit sector, we're trying to just find people with specific talents and skill sets that is hard to find in the job market. And from there, they will definitely put it in the job application, whether they're sponsoring or not. And I mean, right now, like what Brent mentioned, right? If they say that they're not sponsoring, then I think it's a good use of your time to try something else as well.
Yeah, oh, sorry, just wanted to add one more thing. If you have also like a STEM extension, I found it very helpful there's like a tool in the government website where you can search whether the employer that you want to work for is E-Verified or not. Because if the employer is E-Verified, then you can work there using your STEM extension for 3 years without need for like sponsorship. So that's like, as David was saying, I think just being aware of like the different kinds of like jobs you can get and like the visas and immigration, all that, which you should talk to Brent a lot about because he's very helpful and knowledgeable with this, then I think, yeah, you should find it slightly easier. Yeah, it's the website.
Mhm. Okay, I got 2 questions in here. But before I ask Jesse your question, can someone cover what OPT, like the difference between OPT and CPT is, and just kind of go in more in depth of what that is, what they are, if you will, and anyone can share.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. So the main difference that you need to know right now is that in general, CPT is while you're still a student and OPT is after graduation. There are a lot of other differences, but that's the biggest one to keep in mind. I think the other one to think about too is that CPT is granted by Calvin, so it's a much faster process. Once you have all of your forms filled out for CPT, you can generally get approved within a week. Whereas with OPT, the processing time varies because the government has to approve it. So after graduation, you might be able to start work right away, or if the approval is delayed, it might take several months. I'll put a couple links in the chat to Calvin's pages about CPT and OPT, so you can read more later if you'd like.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
one more thing, Brent, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it still the case that if you use 12 months of your CPT, that will affect your OPT?
It's only if you do 12 months of full-time CPT. So, and full-time CPT is really only available during the summer. But yeah, if you do reach 12 months of full-time CPT, then you don't qualify for any OPT after graduation. Even if you do like 11 months and 2 weeks of full-time CPT, you still get your full period of OPT afterwards. But once you reach 12 months of full-time CPT, then you can't get OPT anymore. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, because I almost reached 12 months of CPT. That's why I noticed that I think I have like 1 or 2 months left. So just make sure to be aware that you're very ambitious to have like all full time until 12 months. So that might hinder your OPT. And I think there's also, yeah, just talk with Brent. I think there's also a law, especially with the whole hybrid situation, right? If you need to be in the States the last year of your your before your graduation, you should check these kind of nuances as well.
Okay, next question. What are the deciding factors for hiring managers when they typically look at deciding or when they want to support or offer sponsorship? And then it says specifically, is there anything international students can do in preparation for that stage of the interview process? That might be a 2-parter. So first half, what are some of the factors that they're looking for when deciding to sponsor someone? And then after that, how should international students prepare for the interviewing process?
Yeah, so I guess deciding factors would really be like, I mean, I think honestly it would be, I think, you know, if you're going to be the top contender for the role and if we are able to support like being able to like making sure that we can connect with like our legal counsel, that we can support like any green card or like visa support as needed, then I mean, I don't think there's any hindering factors of if you are the top candidate for a role once you're having an interview with a hiring manager, then I mean, I think the only real aspect that they might think of is really like the cost to their budget of supporting the visa, but it is just a one-time cost to their cost center, and usually that visa support kind of is it's a one-time cost for like 3 years. So it in the long run, if you are the candidate with the best skills, knowledge, and experience needed for the role that they're looking for, and kind of you're the best candidate for the position and they want to offer you the job, usually as long as we are able to support that visa and we can like have, if we connect with like our legal counsel and they are supportive of making sure that we can get you and in and kind of be able to get you started, that's really the only deciding factor, is if you're kind of the best fit for the role. And then I think that just kind of answers like the preparing, just being able to do your best on an interview, just in regardless, being able to like kind of speak to your skills and how your experiences, either from internships, from projects that you've done, from kind of life experiences that you've had, and how those experiences and those skills that you've attained are going to help you with the job that you're applying for.
Alumni, do you guys have any more advice on preparing for the interviewing part? Or any tips?
Honestly, I would say use the Career Center because like I remember going and having like mock interviews there, and those were extremely helpful for me, especially, so I'm an introvert and I'm like horrible interviewing just in general. So like it took a lot of visits to the mock interview place for me to like fully get comfortable just like being able to answer basic like behavioral questions about myself. So they gave me a bunch of like really helpful tips to make you even if you don't like you're not fully confident, you can like make yourself sound confident. There's a lot of like tips and tricks for that. So I would tell you to like definitely go to the Career Center and use the mock interview thing. And also when it comes to immigration, like my last job, it was always the way I mentioned it, because the places that I applied to that I got the jobs from didn't ask the sponsorship question like now or in the future. So the way I said that was that whenever at the end of the interview they would say like, is there anything that you would like us to know about you? Like a lot of places ask you that question in the end. Then I would say like, oh yeah, like I'm an international student and I'm an OPT. I have like 3 years of working with no sponsorship. And then after that, if you like still want me or whatever, then I would need to be sponsored in some way or another. And then they would be like, okay, good to know. So that's when I would sort of like drop that in there. But yeah, in general, just if you show that you're confident, I think, I don't know, that's really good. And if you show that not only that you're confident, but also you're willing to learn the things you don't know, being honest and being like, oh, like I'm not as experienced in this area, and I read in your job description that you require this, like I learn things pretty quickly, or I enjoy like learning new things, like I'm pretty sure that I could, once I'm in the job, like learn this. So like demonstrate that you are passionate about learning the skills that are required if you don't have them.
One thing I'll add is that again, remember that we were at Calvin, right? Whenever you see a job description that says, oh, I might need X skill, A skill, B skill, C skills, whatever skills, try to find that in Calvin. Try to find that. And why, right? Because whenever you go to an interview, this is 2 things that I will do, right? I mean, first, of course, you need to think, okay, what is the value add that I can bring to this company, right? Because I mean, they're paying you, right? And again, like Nigeria mentioned, from a company standpoint, it's a cost for them. And so, what value do you need to can you bring, right? Especially if you're not in a revenue generating role for that firm or employer. For sure, you need to have a very strong case of value that you bring. That's one. But second thing that I want to emphasize is that whenever you go to the interview, right, even though they might not give you a job or a sponsorship, try to keep those relationship intact, because you'll be surprised how many employers suddenly, as the socio-political situation changes in the job market and such, they reach back to you. Hey, are you still looking for this? I think we're able to sponsor these times, or even if you can refer this job position to other things. So try to see your recruiter as also a human being. That's what I would say, right? I mean, if you talk to somebody who's like a machine, just trying to make use of you. I mean, sadly, we're human, so we have these biases, right? And for sure, it's a less you're less willing in terms of first impression. But if you make a good first impression, keep the conversation flowing, and like what Ivana mentioned, you've practiced this with the Career Center, of course. Calvin has a bunch of resources that would increase your chances to maintain that relationship with not just your recruiter, maybe it's an employer or a manager. Just try to maintain, who knows, somewhere down the road. Life is like a puzzle, right? You can only see like one piece at a time, but at the end, maybe you can see, oh, it actually fits into something that I've never thought of before. So two things, right? Relationship and value add. That's what I would add to whatever this conversation is.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yes, please schedule your practice interview appointment with your career coach. Lauren put in the link, so make sure you use that. And I do see that there was another clarifying question Brent answered. So everyone qualifies for 1 year of OPT. Unless you're in STEM, then you can get up to 3 years total. And then after that, you'll need sponsorship. Again, please feel free to put in your questions in the chat. Bring them on, guys. We're ready for them. Okay. So I do have another question for you guys. If you know of any resources, what are some resources for international students searching for work? Specifically, if there are any websites, any companies or programs that hire, or that can help with hiring or so, any resources that you may have or that you may know, if you would like to share those. And if not now, and you think about them later. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
I think I'll touch more on the technical aspect. I think and this is actually not just for international student, but it's actually specifically for campus grads. So you all still use Handshake, right?
We use it, yeah.
Okay, cool. So actually, that's actually a lifesaver during my time. And then I was grateful. A recruiter from Planmoran told me to migrate all my LinkedIn information to there. Apparently, I checked the business model of Handshake, right? So what differentiates LinkedIn and Handshake is that Handshake specifically target schools, and what that means is schools is paying for, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, so you're paying for Handshake, right? As in Calvin pays for Handshake, right? So that's from the one end of the spectrum. Now what that signals to recruiter, right? Whenever they put a job posting there, they're deliberately searching for graduate students instead of LinkedIn, where it's more of a platform for everyone, right? And so it's helpful to see jobs that are on Handshake too, because they specifically cater towards college students or even grad students. And I think even there, they have like those visa statuses as well there. But it's a good platform after I studied the business model a bit.
I would say this is specifically for tech. So like if for minorities in tech, which I mean, international students are minorities in a lot of the cases. So there's a job board for especially women, but also like non-binary people and people from different races, called Diversified Tech. And so that's a job board, and you can filter by like different things, like if you're into data science or like software development or like web development, like whatever it is. And usually because it's all the companies that post jobs there are aiming to diversify their workforce, like literally like 90% of them will like sponsor or at least like are e-verified or something like that, from what my experience, from what I found. So I think that's a good like job board if you are doing tech stuff. And then yeah, Handshake was useful because it has that feature where you can filter for, the visa status, whereas LinkedIn doesn't. But in my experience, it was very tedious, but I just had to like, look online and then go to a specific job and specific company and figure out whether they, like would take me in or not. And then if I couldn't tell, I would just apply anyway. So that was my experience.
Yeah, and I think I would add on to that. I think we shared a bit about the E-Verify. You can also actually check from the government's H-1B database whether that company actually has sponsored H-1B or not. So technically, you can like Calvin has sponsored the H-1B. So you can actually, okay, I mean, it's PII, like personal information, but you can actually see like the salary that they applied it for. It's all public information. You won't see the names, but you'll see at least the position there. And so that helps in terms of filtering. Maybe this position does, and that's a conversation starter as well, right? Maybe you can say, oh, I can see that this year it was filed and these kind of things. So it's good to be well informed in these legal matters as well.
Okay. All right. I don't see any questions in the chat. I have a question. Um, so, in your words, what would you say is a skill or a few skills that international students should work on to stand out as an applicant? And I know you guys talked about willingness to learn, but you can either expand on that or if there's other skills that you believe they should work on.
I think one skill, because I found this to be my case, and like I don't know if it's a cultural thing. I feel like it is for a lot of places, but when you're on a scholarship at Calvin, like your grades matter a lot, right? So it's like you need to have a certain GPA, like for this scholarship, and then like from the cultural side, like my parents, for example, were very much like this is the GPA that you need, right? So like they thought that like doing classes was all that you were in school for. Like they didn't really like think about internships as being like central to your education as well. And so from my experience, I would say that one skill is, I don't know if it would be a skill, but more just like try to be involved in like extracurriculars and try to find like internships and other things outside of just your academics, because in interviews, I've found it very like people want to know about the things that you can like do and how you behave like in a workplace. So if you don't have like that internship experience and you've just been like in school, it's kind of hard to like speak to that. So I don't know, in my experience, like finding and even like on-campus jobs, like my job at CSR, the Center for Social Research, helped me a lot. That was an on-campus job, or my job doing research with Professor Holcomb helped me a lot as well. So I think that's something that I would say if you like, yes, take care of your GPA, but also get involved in extracurriculars to build that. I think that that's sort of a skill to manage your time and balance, you know, both things, because I think internships are just as almost equally as important as like your grades and GPA. And then what else was I going to say for skills? Oh yeah, the willingness to learn thing. I would emphasize that a lot, because there are things that you won't necessarily learn in school, or for my experience, for example, as a data science major, like all the data sets that I use in class are already like cleaned and nice for you, whereas like in the real world, like that's very different. You find like messy data and it's like a different experience that I didn't necessarily know how to do those things, but I was like, oh, I have the basics from school, and like, you know, I'm pretty sure I'll learn it quick. And so then that's what helped me too. So I would just emphasize that as well. The learning, yeah, making sure that you tell them that you can learn things.
I think from my side, I think it really depends, honestly, right? Two things, right? Usually it's character and competency. Character, I think it's like the willingness to learn, truthfulness, other things, right? And competency, it's a bit tricky because each different positions will have different things that they would like to see, right? For example, if my role right now is as a consultant, right? For sure, they would like to see experience in more of leadership, communication, to make sure that I can handle client engagements, right? And so it's very, I would challenge you all to try to take the extra mile, because honestly, the reality is that we, as international student, because of this visa status and just the landscape here, we kind of need to push an extra mile, I would say. Um, Work a bit harder, but for sure, definitely it's going to help. So just try to do that. Like Ivana said, be more thoughtful about the skills that you are trying to acquire, and if possible, be ahead, right? Just try to foresee what would need to be done from your side when you're in the job.
Yeah, and I would just kind of piggyback. I think getting involved in like either internships or extracurriculars are going to be great because then it'll give you more experiences and that you can talk about during your interview, and being able to be involved in internships and extracurriculars that you're passionate about so that you can share that passion with the recruiter, because I think that's a big thing when I was interviewing candidates, is that, you know, sometimes I would have a candidate who is not very engaged and not very passionate about the role, the job that they're applying to, and it kind of, even if they have the skills, they're not like being like, it kind of just turns a person off. And I think that's usual in like any conversation that you're having with someone else. If you can see their passion for what they're talking about and like the experiences that they've had, it's more of an engaging conversation, and it's a lasting impression that you'll leave on that recruiter and on that hiring manager and whoever you're talking to. So I think kind of, and those, being involved is going to help like your having experiences and talking about like communication. I think communication and teamwork in any role that you apply to is going to be key. And I think those are usually like competencies that are needed for any job. And I think especially in the landscape, I mean, we're in more of a virtual world everywhere. But I think being able to still communicate and kind of work as a team is going to be important, and kind of getting those experiences to be able to talk about that during interviews is important.
Thank you, guys. So you have those skills. So a willingness to learn, being persistent and hardworking, gaining more experience and getting involved in different things to gain that experience, and having passion. So take note of those things. All right, young people. All right. So we are getting close to time. I'm going to ask Nadaray a question, and then we'll wrap up after that. So the question is, Nadaray, what do you need from us as career coaches? Or do you think there are things we can help other employers understand better?
I think, I mean, what can we need? I think just transparency. I mean, I think, one, if someone is interviewing, I mean, especially if you guys are currently students or kind of working on like that CPT, OPT status, like having those conversations early is going to be key, because then I think like, especially with an OPT, it can take like a couple, at least 4 to 8 weeks from my experience with one candidate that I worked with, where I ended up having to push their start date because they still didn't have their OPT paperwork to provide, because we do need to have that paperwork when we're completing like an I-9 form to verify that you're eligible to work in the United States. But just being willing to have those conversations early with students and kind of making sure that they're aware, as well as, I mean, I don't know, like I think employers would need to know like what is needed of them for kind of getting or supporting like getting a CPT or an OPT. I think just having that open communication, because I will be honest, like I'm not sure like what specifically like for a CPT, what Calvin would need from Spectrum Health in regards to verifying that we're kind of helping the student get their CPT. So I think that I would need to think about that a little bit more. Not prepared, but I mean, open communication and kind of being able to just connect with a lot of employers that are, willing or interested in, or especially given the job market, I think a lot of employers are open to having those conversations, and kind of learning what is needed and how easy it is to be able to support students that already have availability to a CPT and OPT.
good. No, that's good. Thank you so much. Okay, so to wrap this up, we have one final question for everyone. And that question is, can you share any advice that you may have, final advice that you want to give to our international students?
Myself or all of the panel?
Everyone. Yeah, or all the panel, not everyone on here.
Well, I guess I can start. I mean, I think just not, I mean, I know David and Ivana have mentioned this a lot, like not getting discouraged is going to be key. I think that's really a big thing in searching for a job in general, because, you know, you're going to find the job that's going to be a good, like a best fit for yourself. Like it might, if the job is not going to be the right fit, or if they're not sponsoring at the time, like, you know, it's their loss that they can't, and then you might be able to, it might not just be the right puzzle, if we're going to go with, like, it might just not be the correct puzzle piece at that time to get to the whole picture. So, I mean, just not getting discouraged and just connect and be willing, and having those conversations and networking with recruiters is going to be important.
I think something that I found really important, and I wish I had heard before in my life at Calvin, is just occasionally going out on like LinkedIn or whatever like job posting thing you want, and just typing like the things that you see yourself doing in the future to kind of see like what the job market looks like and what kind of skills they're requiring of you. So, for example, if I want to be, I don't know, a data scientist, like, oh, nowadays they require me to learn Python, they want me to learn R, they want me to know about statistics, they want to do. So I have like a checklist of things that I need to do throughout my time at Calvin, like, oh, maybe I should take a statistics class. Oh, maybe I should look for this class that, you know, teaches me how to program in Python. So then I slowly start building my skills so that like once I get to like my full-time job, I sort of like fit the boxes, you know, and you're like a perfect candidate almost for like all of these positions that are out. And then I would also emphasize just talking with Brent and keeping in constant communication with him, because he will be there. Like literally, I emailed Brent still like today. He helped me with like a huge like thing in one of my places, as David mentioned, that didn't know how to deal with like OPT. So it was chaotic. And then like Brent was there to like help me through it all. So like seriously, just like email Brent and like, yeah, connect with him about immigration stuff, because that's really helpful.
I think for me, it's more of a forward-looking advice, right? I think as you progress towards your education, then your career, I think always remember that this is one of the principles that I always hold dear to. God has been providing and will be providing certain peoples in your life and within your own circle, right? And it's very important to just never forget those people, and especially the people that have brought you towards the stage, whether it be your parents, your teachers, or whoever, right? And always try to always think, what can you do to help them, and also give back to others around you as well. Because always think of that one person that actually helped you. If that one person wasn't there, then you might not have been to that particular stage, right? So always be thankful, be intentional, keep in touch in one way or the other, and just give back either to them or towards the people around you in the future. I think that's one advice that I think not just about job searching, but even after Calvin, that's going to be very useful.
Awesome. Thank you so much, panelists. You guys, you're awesome. Just know that. But no, we want to thank you so much for just joining us today and being a voice for our international students to hear your stories. And thank you so much for sharing your advice as well. I would also say to students, please use your resources, use the Career Center, use Brent. And even if you want to, and if it's okay with the panelists, reach out to them as well and other alumni, network, because that's definitely going to help you. So yeah, just use your resources and keep working hard. But that is our time. We do have one announcement that we want to share with you. Something is happening this Friday, and so I'm going to open the floor for Lauren to share more information about that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Just letting you all know, we put it in the chat. Meredith put the link, but there is a webinar this Friday from 12 to 1:30. So it's all about careers in West Michigan, specifically for international students, opportunities for international students. So you will need to register for that event. It'll be hosted on Zoom, so you can follow that link in the chat, and that might be another good resource to check out as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. And again, thank you to the panelists, and thank you all for showing up as well. And we hope you have a wonderful day. Blessings.
Good to see everyone.